Good afternoon. We have assembled today to participate in discussion on a subject of great importance, improving Indo-Pak relations.
The Wi-Fi is not.
Mute yourself.
Shall we mute our things or what?
Otherwise, there would be sound and. Can we begin?
Yes.
We all know that relations are far from cordial and comfortable. We need to spend some time together and make sure that at some point of a time of our history, we have normal relations and we are able to do regular business freely. We don't have even high commissioner in each other's country. I hope we will be able to identify the programs which, if implemented, will bring us closer and bring peace in the subcontinent. May I now request Mr. Najam Sethi, Lahore, to initiate the discussion in 7-8 minutes, and then Mr. Manishankar Iyer from India will offer his comments. We will carry on this discussion like this, and then we'll have some time for discussion based on the discussions that we've had so far.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here among such a distinguished collegiate. The subject at hand is pretty old. We keep going over this, trying to improve Indo-Pakistan relations, and we keep coming across old and new roadblocks. So I think one should be forward-looking rather than backward-looking in terms of how it keeps getting stuck up. So I'm just going to now suggest that given the circumstances that exist in both India and in Pakistan, what is likely to happen? And whether we and the sort of thoughts we have can make any difference to the way of going forward. You will all recall that Nawaz Sharif has always wanted to make a difference to this process of building peace. But at every stage, he's been thwarted. I talk now of the last 10 or 15 years. I'm not going to go into the reasons for that. We all know those reasons. But I think we now have another opportunity coming our way. And that opportunity is going to be afforded in the event that Nawaz Sharif becomes Prime Minister again. Now, I will say as much that the establishment in Pakistan wants to see him as Prime Minister. Whether he will make it or not, I can't say. But having said that, in the event that he becomes Prime Minister, I can say with a degree of assurance that one of the items on his agenda will be to open talks with India again. And I say that with a degree of guarantee that he will want to do that. Not just India, he also wants better relations with Afghanistan. And as we know, he's gone the extra length to try and start something or the other. And he will do so again. He was thwarted in the past by an establishment that was not ready to throw in the towel and continue on its path. But I think the situation in Pakistan is such that now the establishment will not be a roadblock in Nawaz Sharif's efforts to start or kickstart a process. Now, what that process will be, what small steps can be taken by the Pakistani side that will not create a backlash in Pakistan, but also create an opening for a response from the other side, is difficult to say, but I think it will happen. Whether it will be trade, because Pakistan is the one that cut off trade in the last round, whether it will be the slow opening of trade and facilitation, and whether there will be a degree of cricket diplomacy to get the Indian cricket team to come and play in Pakistan for the Champions Trophy. I think these are the small steps that might be initiated. Uh, Having said that, as I said, there's no guarantee Nawaz Sharif will be in power. There's no guarantee right now. We don't even know whether the elections will be held and how, and what legitimacy these will have, and what legitimacy Nawaz Sharif will have to undertake such a step. The recent unfortunate incidents during the World Cup have turned a lot of Pakistanis against cricket diplomacy. This was once a very real option, but I think recently there's been a backlash in terms of how the Pakistani cricket team was meted in India, especially in one or two cities. But I think Nawaz Sharif is not the sort of person to wait on such incidents. He will still want to move on. Now, having said that, I think I'd like my Indian friends to tell me what is likely to happen in India that might obstruct or facilitate any initiatives that might come from the Pakistani side. I think, in principle, the establishment and political parties are agreed that we need to move on and start normalizing relations with India. The old jihad and all the rest of it is all gone. We have a lot of internal problems which we are trying to solve, especially get the economy moving. So I don't think hostility with India is on the table as far as we are concerned. That's my assessment. Having said that, now I don't want to go into this. You have your own elections next year. I don't even know what fate the political parties have or what the people of India will say and will vote for. So therefore, I think it would be important for you to tell us, in the event that Nawaz Sharif were to get elected as Prime Minister, and try and make small openings, how far do you think these will succeed, given what is likely to happen in India next March, April, May, whenever the next elections are going to be held? Clearly, before that, I can't imagine any response from the other side. But I just wanted to open this discussion by saying that from the Pakistani side, I predict that there will be an attempt to try and slowly normalize. We may make all sorts of noises about what outstanding issues there are and all the rest of it. But I think in practical terms, there may be some small steps taken. And so therefore, it's important to understand from your perspective whether those small steps will be reciprocated or not going forward after your elections are held and whoever comes to power. So I don't think I need to say any more. I think that's one way to start this discussion. Thank you.
Mr. Manishankar Iyer, and you will have Kaji Saab from Pakistan. Mr. Manishankar Iyer, next 7-8 minutes.
Well, I think Najam Sethi has summed up the situation quite extraordinarily well. Yes, 2024 is going to be an important year. We would certainly hope for Nawaz Sharif to come to power, because he has indicated in the past and is currently signaling through Najam, among others, that he's ready to restart a dialogue with India. What I'm more pessimistic about is the extent to which India will respond. There are two possible outcomes of the coming Indian elections. One is, I think, an 80% chance that Narendra Modi will be re-elected. The other is a 20% dark horse bet that the India alliance will get its act together and come to power. In the highly unlikely event of the India alliance coming to power, there will have to be intense discussions between the allies as to whether they would want to crown their victory with an opening to Pakistan or not. Certainly in the past, Dr. Manmohan Singh, before him, Mr. Narasimha Rao, and earlier than that, Rajiv Gandhi, had demonstrated I forgot to mention Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, had demonstrated a genuine desire to somehow make an opening to Pakistan. And I think Dr. Manmohan Singh and Pervez Musharraf carried that process the most forward. And we had an almost ready formula, even on the core issue of Kashmir, let alone other, perhaps more important, but relatively minor matters like people-to-people contact, business, and so on and so forth. Therefore, it is possible that the Congress in the alliance will make a move is being ready to allow whoever is the prime minister and whoever is the foreign minister to take matters forward. So very, very conditionally, I would say that the prospects are better if the India alliance were to come to power. But I think the chances of that happening are a very long odds. I would say that that is the dark horse option. The far more likely thing to happen is that Sri Narendra Modi will return as the Prime Minister. If he does, can one expect any change of heart on his part? It is true that in 2014, when he was first elected, he made a dramatic gesture of inviting all his colleagues, the heads of government and state in our neighborhood, to come to Delhi, and they all did. But eventually, what appeared to be a takeoff point for India-Pakistan relations faltered and failed because Mr. Modi came up against his own most impassioned constituency. And that is the diehards who say basically that if Pakistan is an Islamic country, why can India not be a Hindu country? And in the process of trying to change us from a secular country into a denominational country, as Pakistan has done, he finds a major obstacle which the Pakistanis, at least the West Pakistanis, have not faced since about August of 1947. And that is the presence in India of a very large number of Muslims. They are expected to top 200 million at the next census, making India one of the biggest Muslim countries in the world. And it is the presence of these Muslims in India that is the single biggest block in the way to making India a Hindu nation. And that is why there would be an apparent contradiction between Mr. Modi reaching out to Pakistan and keeping our country divided on a religious basis between Hindus and Muslims. That fundamental reality is not going to change, and therefore small steps will only lead to a very narrow dialogue, which I don't think will fundamentally alter the relations between India and Pakistan. We need in the BJP a stalwart like Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and in the India alliance, a stalwart like Dr. Manmohan Singh, to reciprocate in adequate measure to what I agree with Najam is likely to be a major effort by Pakistan under Nawaz Sharif assuming he comes to power, which I think is 80% certain, and anyone else has only a 20% chance. So our two countries are in many ways at this juncture placed reciprocally. There is a major possibility of Nawaz Sharif coming to power in Pakistan and trying to open up with India. And there is an equal possibility of Sri Narendra Modi becoming the Prime Minister again, with a similar 80% chance. But I think the fundamentals of the BJP philosophy of Hindutva would stand in the way of his making any very meaningful gesture in the direction of Pakistan. So I can only hope and pray. Well, since I'm an atheist, I can't pray, but I hope that we will be able to see in 2024 governments in Pakistan and in India which recognize that there is no way in which India can become as big a power as it wishes to and to which it is entitled unless it makes friends in its neighborhood, beginning with Pakistan and continuing with a restarting of SAARC. The two, I think, are intimately related because it is only India's desire to put Pakistan in its place that has prevented the SAARC summit from taking place in Islamabad, thereby leaching SAARC of any legitimacy and any continuity. So therefore, it is not only the future of India and Pakistan that depend on the voters' decision next year, but also what will happen in South Asia as a whole. Therefore, I would request all of you who have a greater faith to pray that next year we will see governments in India and Pakistan that are willing to talk to each other, to commence a dialogue, which to be successful has, if I may reiterate, has to be uninterrupted and uninterruptible. Without that process, we are not going to be able to come to a conclusion. But given that there is so much goodwill for India in Pakistan, and that there is perhaps quite a major section of Indian opinion which would also like to see a modicum of moderation and normalcy brought into the India-Pakistan relationship, that we can go ahead. But if the elections in Pakistan result in someone else coming to power than Nawaz Sharif, and someone else than the India Alliance coming to power in India, then I'm afraid I will have to continue to wallow in my discomfort at this prospect. So the future is rather dark, but there are streaks of hope on the far horizon. And I can only hope, as an Indian who has enjoyed the hospitality of Pakistanis, the friendship and affection of Pakistanis, that we will, in fact, be able to make a breakthrough in 2024, notwithstanding the many reservations I hold as 2023 draws to a close. Thank you, Jai Hind, and Pakistan Paindabad.
Please offer your comments, and then we will have Tariq Ami Saab from India.
शाह साहब,
Yes, please.
आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। क्या आज के इस एटमॉस्फेयर ऑफ
एक सेकंड, तारिक आमी साहब बोल रहे हैं?
जी हाँ, जी हाँ।
नहीं, आपसे पहले काजी साहब बोलेंगे। काजी साहब, प्लीज, एंड देन यू विल।
Obi Shah Sahib, dear friends from Pakistan and India, Assalamu alaikum, and good wishes to all of you. It's a great privilege to join such an illustrious group of people, many of whom are good friends from both India and Pakistan, on a subject of huge importance to both of us. Possibly more importance for Pakistan being the smaller country, but nonetheless, I think for India to realize its potential, a good relationship with Pakistan is an essential ingredient in that process. I'd like to make a distinction right at the beginning between state-to-state relations and people-to-people relations. And although many of us have had the opportunity to serve in our respective governments, we are all, if I'm not mistaken, today, private citizens. And I believe we are having this meeting as part of a peoples-to-people process rather than a government-to-government process. And I make this distinction because it's very important. If we talk about dialogue in a state-to-state context, then of course, the dialogue will take place with respect to what the respective positions of the two states are with regard to each other and the issues between each other, particularly the salient issues, the major issues. And we are aware of what those positions are, what those subjects are. And within that context, the prospect for any resumption of dialogue soon is very bleak, as Mani himself has just said. There's a less than 80% chance of that happening. I don't quite go as far as saying that if the results as expected in Pakistan of the kind of election that we are likely to have, if it doesn't turn out to be that way, then dialogue between India and Pakistan becomes much more difficult because there's more than one political leader in Pakistan who is in favor of a much better relationship with India. But of course, that relationship has to be based on not just a desire for a better relationship, but a mutual respect for each other and each other's perceptions. And that has, to some extent, been lacking and has provided a major block. Our narratives are mutually exclusive. And if we can't develop a regard for each other's narratives and understand the background, and indeed, maybe the justification for those narratives being what they are, then it becomes very difficult to sustain a dialogue. That is why I'm far more hopeful for the moment of a dialogue taking place on a people-to-people basis, which is what is happening, in my belief, right now. And here we need to talk that even if the states, the two states, India and Pakistan, are not talking to each other right now, largely because of India's reluctance or indifference towards it. And it's an election year, as has been pointed out in India. And of course, India-Pakistan relations always acquire a greater significance in an Indian election year, less so in the case of Pakistan, but also to an extent there. So if we're talking about people-to-people relations, then of course, the fact is that a considerable minority, particularly among intellectuals, but even outside the intellectual class and the middle classes, there's a very, very considerable number of people in both countries who want a better relationship, who instinctively realize it'll make life easier, particularly in Pakistan, we have realized that, and I'm sure to a great extent also in India. And so if the two states are not talking with each other for the reasons which we're all aware of, and the likelihood of that happening soon is low, there's no reason why our people-to-people format should not continue. In fact, it's absolutely crucial that precisely because the state-to-state format is not immediately available and is not likely to be available for quite some time, the people-to-people format must be made use of in order to gradually prepare the ground to the extent possible, broaden the kind of support that we all need for a better India-Pakistan relationship. And that's why I welcome participation in this people-to-people relationship. Now, we have to realize when we talk about narrative and developing a mutual respect for each other, that the one event which has made a huge difference to the relationship has been August the 5th, 2019. And August the 5th, 2019 meant that India took Jammu and Kashmir out of the agenda of talks between India and Pakistan. And normally, an agenda has to be agreed by both sides for talks to be productive. It's not necessary in our format. We don't have an agenda, as Shah Sahib has pointed out very correctly. This is a conversation and all. We're not talking, but we are linked to the state-to-state relationship, and hopefully will influence. Go ahead.
Yes, please. Sorry.
Yeah, there was I thought I was talking too long, but let me just, when August the 5th, 2019 took place, Pakistan was indeed confronted with a problem, and it wouldn't have mattered, even if, as has been mentioned, even if Nawaz Sharif had been the prime minister, he would not have been able to take a step different from what was taken at the time. Because once you take the Kashmir out of the India-Pakistan agreed agenda, the basis for talks doesn't exist. And when the LOC no longer exists, and the LOC proceeds from the similar accord, according to which neither party, India nor Pakistan, was supposed to take unilateral steps that would change the situation on the ground, then the basis for talks was interrupted very, very seriously and would have to be reconstructed, for which a will on both sides would be actually required. That has not yet happened. So it wouldn't matter who was the prime minister in Pakistan on August the 5th, 2019. The process of state-to-state dialogue between India and Pakistan would have 100% have been interrupted, because you wouldn't have had a format, a process, a state-to-state process. Now, how do we proceed from here? We have to proceed the way we're doing right now. We're meeting each other as friends. We have a huge amount of respect for each other. We might not always share the same opinions because we are coming from different backgrounds. We've been nourished on different narratives and all. And even though we seek to know as much as is possible about the other sides out of a desire to be friends and to know as much as is possible, the fact is that we are coming from different angles, sharing a desire to have a better relationship. So I think this is the first very important step. The only real, we can go on and on, but I mean, mutual respect for each other's narratives is something that we need to do. If we get into the blame game, we will destroy the process before it even got started and all. So we should avoid that. And we should try and seek through personal contacts, through our interactions with our own people back home, to try and maneuver our policymakers into giving a much larger priority to a better relationship between our two countries and restoring the state-to-state relationship, which would require certain specific steps with regard to August the 5th, 2019.
Thank you. Mr. Tarigami from Srinagar. And then we'll have Azaduddin Saab from Lahore. Mr. Tarigami is former MLA of CPM from Jammu and Kashmir. Mr. Tarigami, please.
शाह साहब, आपका बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. एक अपॉर्चुनिटी आपने प्रोवाइड की हम सबको, कम से कम एक दूसरे को देखने के लिए और सुनने के लिए. एप्रिशिएबल. अभी हमारे कई डिस्टिंग्विश्ड पार्टिसिपेंट्स ने, सेठी साहब हैं, आयर साहब हैं, काजी साहब हैं, बहुत वैल्यूएबल कमेंट्स पेश किए. मैं सिर्फ इतना कहूँगा कि इंडो पाक रिलेशंस और खास तौर पर जो हॉस्टिलिटीज आज के वक्त में मौजूद हैं, ये पहले भी ऐसा हुआ है कि हॉस्टिलिटीज दोनों स्टेट्स, दोनों गवर्नमेंट्स के बीच में ब्रॉडर पॉलिटिकल मोबिलाइजेशन का मौका फराहम करती आई है। और आज चूंकि जैसा कि नजम साहब ने बताया, वहां भी चुनाव का अमल पॉसिबली शुरू होने वाला है नेक्स्ट ईयर। और जहां तक हमारे मुल्क में ताल्लुक है, ये तो डिसाइडेड है 2024 में इलेक्शंस होंगे। और आज तक हमारी तारीख यही बता रही है मोस्टली कि हमारे दरमियान जो गैप्स रहे हैं, हॉस्टिलिटीज रही हैं, वो खास तौर पर इलेक्टोरल प्रोसेस में मोबिलाइजेशन का एक जरिया बनी है आज तक। वही आज तक का एक्सपीरियंस है। लेकिन अभी काजी साहब ने बताया नवाज शरीफ के बारे में, उनके जो रोल रहा है दो ममालिक के बीच में रिलेशनशिप को कायम करने में, लेकिन ये भी अभी साफ दिखाई नहीं देता है कि हाउ द पॉलिटिकल सिचुएशन शेप्स इटसेल्फ इन पाकिस्तान। इलेक्शंस होंगे और इलेक्शंस में क्या इमर्ज होता है। लेकिन जहां तक खैर साहब का ताल्लुक है, उन्होंने बताया कि यहाँ भी चुनाव है और मोस्ट प्रोबेबली 80% उन्होंने कहा चांसेस हैं मौजूदा सरकार के बारे में मैंडेट मिलने का, जो इन्होंने कहा। लेकिन बहरहाल ये मैं बताऊंगा, क्या जो काजी साहब ने बताया, दो स्टेट्स के बीच में, दो गवर्नमेंट्स के बीच में बातचीत का सिलसिला कब हो, लेकिन पीपल टू पीपल कांटेक्ट का होना जरूरी है। मैं भी इस बात के साथ सहमत हूं। मुझे अभी नजर नहीं आता है आने वाले महीनों में या इमीडिएट फ्यूचर में कोई ब्रेक थ्रू होगा, कोई बड़ा कदम उठाया जाएगा हमारे रिलेशंस को इम्प्रूव करने के बारे में दोनों ममालिक की तरफ से। और मुझे मालूम नहीं है कि हाउ द वर्ल्ड शेप्स इटसेल्फ, कोरिलेशन ऑफ फोर्सेस कैसे इमर्ज होते हैं हमारे खिते में भी, पूरी दुनिया में आने वाले वक्त में, बिकॉज देयर इज अ सीरियस सिचुएशन इमर्जिंग अराउंड वर्ल्ड वाइड। तो लाजमी तौर पर हम भी उससे दूर रह नहीं सकते, इन आइसोलेशन सोच नहीं सकते, ये मेरा यकीन है। लेकिन बहरहाल वो तो आने वाली बातें हैं, आने वाला दौर हमें बताएगा। लेकिन इमीडिएटली बड़े मामलात के बारे में जो डिस्प्यूट रहा है हमारे दो ममालिक के बीच में, उनके बारे में हम तज्जिया कर लें, क्या वो मुनासिब है आज। लेकिन इतना जरूर है कि अगर कोई ओपिनियन इमर्ज हो जाती है दोनों मुल्कों में, डेमोक्रेटिक ओपिनियन फॉर पीस इन द रीजन एंड फॉर सम सॉर्ट ऑफ ए डायलॉग, मुझे मालूम नहीं है अभी दो ममालिक के बीच में किस लेवल का कंटैक्ट भी मौजूद है या नहीं, लेकिन जो सिविल सोसाइटी है, इंटेलेक्चुअल कम्युनिटी है, और भी जो कंसर्न सिटीजन हैं दोनों ममालिक में, मैं काजी साहब को ये यकीन दिलाना चाहता हूं, अगर पाकिस्तान में ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी मौजूद है, पीस विद इंडिया, पीस इन द रीजन, यहाँ हमारे मुल्क में भी ये अलग सवाल है डोमिनेंट फोर्सेस के इंटरेस्ट क्या होंगे, वो कैसे नैरेटिव बिल्ड कर लेंगे और वो नैरेटिव कैसे नजर आएगा। लेकिन इसके अलावा यहाँ भी अंडर करंट ऐसे कुव्वतें हैं, फोर्सेस हैं जो पीस चाहती हैं रीजन में, जो डायलॉग के जरिए मसाइल का हल चाहते हैं। मैं ज्यादा नहीं कहूँगा, सिर्फ इतनी सी बात है कि हमारे लेवल पर, जैसा कि अभी हमारे जितने भी पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं, डिस्टिंग्विश्ड पार्टिसिपेंट्स, उन्होंने बताया कि एक डायलॉग का माहौल
नेक्स्ट वीक
बने।
चेक करके फिर बता देता हूँ तुम्हें, ठीक है? क्योंकि गौरवदीप तो चला गया वहां से, तो पता चल गया होगा तुम्हें।
Sorry, please continue.
हाँ, पीपल टू पीपल कांटेक्ट का सवाल और पीपल टू पीपल कंट्रैक्ट का सवाल ये है कि जैसा कि आपने ये इनिशिएटिव लिया, इस इनिशिएटिव को और बढ़ाया जाए, बातचीत हो, बात करना। और हमारी, मैं एक बताऊंगा, एक बहुत ही नामवर पीस एक्टिविस्ट निर्मला देशपांडे, वो आप हमारे बीच में रही नहीं है, उनका एक मिशन बना था कि बात करो, बात से बात बनती है, बार बार वो दोहराती आई है। और मेरी नजर में यही है कि ऐसा कोई हमारे पास मिरेकल्स इनिशिएटिव नहीं होगा इमीडिएट फ्यूचर में जहां ये जो हॉस्टिलिटीज के या जो गैप्स हैं उनको पूरा किया जाएगा, नजदीकियां पैदा होंगी दो ममालिक के बीच में। लेकिन इतना जरूर है कि एक ओपिनियन बने, एक कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी डेवलप हो दोनों ममालिक में, बातचीत के, डायलॉग के, पीपल्स लेवल पर और बाद में सरकारी सतह पर। लाजमन ये बातें बहुत जरूरी है। आज ये बताइए कि अनफॉर्चुनेटली बहुत सारे लोग हैं यहाँ हमारे मुल्क में भी जो चाहते हैं पाकिस्तान जाए, लेकिन वीजा सिस्टम, बहुत सारे लोग ये चाहते हैं वहां से भी यहाँ आ जाए। वो कल्चरल फील्ड में काम करने वाले, स्टूडेंट कम्युनिटी के साथ या बिजनेस कम्युनिटी के साथ ताल्लुक रखने वाले लोग, उनका इंटरेस्ट भी है एक दूसरे के साथ ताल्लुकात बढ़े। लेकिन रेल सर्विस वो भी बंद, बस सर्विस वो भी बंद, और जो एयर सर्विस वो तो बिल्कुल ही बंद। तो इन हालात में ये एक ऐसी सिचुएशन है जो ज्यादा उम्मीद होप लेसनेस की सिचुएशन जैसी है। लेकिन मेरी पख्ता राय है कि इस धुंधलाहट में भी कुछ अपॉर्चुनिटीज इमर्ज होंगी आने वाले वक्त में, और वो जरूरत है। जैसा कि एक बार हमारे ये जो काजी साहब इन्होंने लिखा भी था कि एक इंटरेस्ट को डेवलप करने की जरूरत है, आइडेंटिफाई करने की जरूरत है, जहां हॉस्टिलिटीज की को पहचाना जाए कि दोनों मुल्कों के लिए नुकसान है, सिर्फ एक मुल्क के लिए नुकसान नहीं है। कोई भी रिजीम आ जाए यहाँ और कोई रिजीम वहां आ जाए, लेकिन फाइनली दे हैव टू लीड द रेस्पेक्टिव सिटीजन्स, रेस्पेक्टिव कम्युनिटी ऑफ पीपल। तो उनके लिए कुछ करना होगा। तो उसके लिए ये जरूरत है कि हम यहाँ ऐसे एरियाज को आइडेंटिफाई कर ले जहाँ कुछ राहत भी मिले लोगों को, और उस राहत के हिस्से वो तभी मुमकिन होगा जब दो ममालिक के बीच में अमन की बात हो या डायलॉग की सूरत निकले या फाइनली पीस रेस्टोर हो। उसमें कई सारे इश्यूज हैं, उनको रिजॉल्व करने का सवाल है, लाजिमन कंसर्न्स है एक दूसरे के, अकोमोडेशन की जरूरत है, नो डाउट। लेकिन एज ऑफ नाउ बहुत ज्यादा जरूरी है कि डायलॉग के दरीचे खुले, अगर बहुत बड़े दरवाजे नहीं, दरीचे खुले, कंटैक्ट और राबिते के कुछ अपॉर्चुनिटीज मिले। मैं इसी वजह से आज के इस आपके इनिशिएटिव में शरीक होने के लिए आया। दो आई एम नॉट वेल, लेकिन ये इस एक पैशन को देखते हुए कि मैं सलाम कर लूं कि अभी भी हमारे इस खत्ते में ऐसे लोग, ऐसे पर्सनालिटीज मौजूद हैं जो अभी भी एक फ्यूचर की तरफ देखते हैं अवाम के लिए और राहें ढूंढते हैं ताकि अमन का रास्ता हमवार हो। बातचीत के जरिए मसाइल का हल ढूंढा जाए, उस रास्ते पर गामजन रहें। ये बड़ी एनकरेजमेंट है एक कश्मीरी होने के नाते। जैसा कि आपने मेरा तारुफ कराया, मैं कश्मीर से मेरा ताल्लुक है, और हमारे लिए बड़ी राहत है अगर दो ममालिक कम्युनिकेशन खोले, आपस में बातचीत करें, हमें राहत मिलेगी। और ये बहुत बड़ा कॉन्फिडेंस बिल्डिंग मेजर होगा दोनों ममालिक की तरफ से अगर वो डायलॉग इनिशिएट कर ले, कुछ अहम मुद्दों पर न सही इमीडिएट जो कंसर्न्स हैं दोनों ममालिक के, कम से कम एक दूसरे के साथ आना जाना रहे। अगर इन इश्यूज पर भी डायलॉग हो, ये राहत का सबब बन सकता है हम सब के लिए, खासतौर मैं अपनी बात कर लूंगा कश्मीरी आवाम के लिए। बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया।
Thank you. Azaduddin Saab from Bangalore and then Kapil Kak Saab from Delhi. लाहौर से आप बोलेंगे?
बोल रहा हूँ जी.
हाँ, प्लीज.
Well, first of all, Shah Sahab, thank you so much indeed for inviting me to participate in this initiative, which I think is of vital significance to anybody living in the subcontinent, not just India and Pakistan, because rather like the two elephants, wherever we fight, the grass around around us gets trampled upon. I'm going to speak to you on the assumption that there is freedom after the speech. And I will speak to you as one out of 250, approximately 250 million civilians who are still waiting for the opportunity to elect a government of their choice. I cannot speak for the less than 500,000 armored personnel that we have, because they're not elected and they're not answerable to us. Let me first deal with the question of the elections and the aftermath of the elections that are likely to take place. Mani has spoken, and rightly, and whatever he said needs to be taken with seriousness, is that Mr. Narendra Modi and oblique BJP will be re-elected for another 5 years. Now, if you ask me as a Pakistani, what does that signify for us? It means that Mr. Modi will be there for 5 years, and then, having consolidated his position, as he's already done, but he will consolidate it yet further and deeper, he will then contest the elections for another 5 years. On the assumption that he comes in, or BJP comes in, or somebody from BJP comes in, then that continuity will remain for another 5 years and another 5 years. This is my, I hope, as an intelligent Pakistani's anticipation of what is likely to happen, because I cannot see the 20% that Mani spoke of the Indian alliance being able to put their act together and to be able to come in and topple, like they did with Mrs. Gandhi, to be able to topple Mr. Modi. So are we talking about, as I suspect, 5 years of Mr. Modi, and then another 10 years of the BJP, led by whoever? And I suspect, just reading the entrails of the birds that fly by, I would say it'll probably be Mr. Amit Shah. Now, on our side, Raja has spoken, and Mani has endorsed this, of there's a possibility of a government coming in, headed by Nawaz Sharif. This, I think, is optimistic, to say the least, because it is quite likely, and by their own admission, that the PMLN will not come in with an absolute majority. The powers that be will not want him and the PMLN to have an absolute majority. They will want them to be in coalition, in which case the ability of Mr. Nawaz Sharif, if he is elected, if the PMLN has a majority and is able to form a government, and he has the freedom to be able to open initiatives. India, his freedom to be able to operate, to open that initiative, is going to be severely curtailed by the partners that he will have in his coalition. Now, let me come on to the bilateral relations, state to state, as Qazi Sahib said. What can we offer India, and what can India offer us? The truth of the matter, and I'm not going to speak perfectly openly to you, India, we have nothing to offer India. There's nothing that we have that is going to make us more attractive to an India which has already surpassed us in a number of ways, not least of which is that they have reached the moon before we did. These are very serious considerations, because it means there is a level of self-confidence that has come in the Indian psyche, which shows that anything is possible for them, and they can, in fact, reach the stars, right, on their own. They haven't done it with somebody's assistance. Now let me come to a point that was made about religion. The fact that Mr. Modi has been given an opportunity in the last 5,000 years to create a Hindu state. It has never happened before, and it is now irreversible. that is his intention. But it's interesting that the argument used that if Pakistan can be created on the basis of religion, as was Israel, then why can't India be also identified on the basis of religion? And the last time I heard this sort of argument was, not personally, but the last time this sort of argument was put forward was during the Middle Ages, when Great Britain was a Roman Catholic, was a Protestant state, and the Roman Catholics were represented by France and by Spain. So what were basically religious confrontations were then transmuted into state-to-state confrontations. They resolved it, tried to resolve it by marriages, etc., but it didn't work. That hostility between France, Roman Catholic, and the United Kingdom, Protestant, continued for almost about 400 years. It took 2 world wars to bring them together. Now let me come to the political alliances that have emerged. If you'd asked me 30 years ago, the United States and Pakistan were allies. Today, interestingly, it's India and the United States that are coming closer, and India is replacing us as the favorite concubine in the eyes of the United States. And 30 years ago, Russia and India were in bed together. Today, Pakistan is polygamous. It has relations with China and with Russia. And this alignment will have serious significance for us and for you in the next 30 years. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because whoever begins to talk about Indo-Pak relations on a bilateral basis will have to feed this into the equation. Let me come on to, as we have got members from Azad Jammu and Kashmir, from Jammu and Kashmir, Azad Jammu and Kashmir, and yours, I think one has to recognize that India has taken, Mr. Modi's government has taken the unilateral step of abrogating not just Article 370, but the very principle of the Shimla Agreement and the Lahore Declaration. What was intended gradually was to move from a position of confrontation to one of conciliation to one of cooperation has now been completely vitiated. Because if the Indian Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha can vote for the abrogation of Article 370, what is there to prevent them from revoking the Indus Waters Treaty unilaterally? Now, these are issues which, regardless of whether they appear on the agenda of a discussion or purported discussion between India and Pakistan, these are issues that are the reality. They've got nothing to do with what each, the public feels or people-to-people contact like we've got. The very fact that we've got old hands sitting around the table saying the same things means that we are not speaking on behalf of 220 million people on our side and 1.5 billion people on your side. We can't influence the governments on either side. And to that extent, we have to admit that we have a very limited utility. The last, I'm going to, if you don't mind, it's something that we should all consider very seriously. Kuldeep Nayyar, who was, like Mani, was a pro-Pakistani Indian. We used to meet regularly. He'd come over and we'd meet and have a discussion like we're doing now. He told me that he was on his way to Islamabad to meet General Musharraf, who had just taken over. And he asked me a question, and I hope all of you will take this in the spirit with which I say it, including those who are listening in. He asked me, Ijaz, is Kashmir the core issue for Pakistan? I'm going to be meeting Musharraf. Tell me, is it the core issue for Pakistan? I'm not sure what came over me, but I replied, Kuldeep, Kashmir is less a core issue for Pakistan. It's more a core commander's issue. And this is what I'm going to end with. Because when you have the abrogation of Article 370, when you can have a map, and this is a question I asked our Foreign Office, what was the map that was attached to the resolution that was passed by the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. And that map includes all the territories that were in the former state of Jammu and Kashmir, the Riyasat. Now, when you have that situation formally adopted by one state, which is laying claim to, whether it's disputed or not, but laying claim to territory that is in the possession of somebody else, that is, for me, it's a recipe for difficulty, if not disaster. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Kapil Kak Saab and then General Saab.
Well, thank you very much.
Kapil Kak Saab, and then we'll have.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Hopi Shah Saab. I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate you for your determination and persistence with pursuit of the civil society dialogue, despite the current situation being what it is. I do believe that the fundamentals that have decelerated forward movement can be ascribed to many things. I'll not go over what's already been said. Basically, adoption of maximalist positions. One of our Pakistani friends talked about confidence on the part of India. I think it's a little more than that. Avoidable sense of hubris and euphoria on our side. We also need to consider in terms of what is the overarching framework within which improvements in India-Pakistan relations can take place. And that is that in the geopolitical universe of which we are a part, India and Pakistan are in different planetary orbits, and they're on the opposite sides of the emerging global order. And therefore, the vectors in the overarching sense do not suggest that we have an era of unremitting peace and great level of stability. But I'm not one to give up. This is one characteristic of the Kashmiri. He retains the optimism in the worst of times. So let me see. I mean, just put up for your consideration, flag a few things which have happened despite the horrible state of the relationship, virtually in the pits. First is, let's put on record that it's over 3.5, nearly 4 years that a renewed ceasefire has operated between India and Pakistan. There was a political message in that DGMO dialogue, some of you will recall, that unfortunately did not move forward. But we did have the back channel, which is continuing. People have made references to it. It's my understanding that the back channel between India and NSA and the elements across, maybe Qamar Bajwa, it sustained all through over the last 5 years or more. And after General Bajwa's retirement, some other 2 or 3 vectors in terms of back channels are currently operating. I want you to make a note of this, because this will, in a sense, suggest what could be the prospects when we have changes in government in the next couple of months. We have no anti-Pakistan rhetoric in the recently concluded 5 states elections in India. I didn't see one single instance, and you know how noisy India can be during electioneering. Not a word against Pakistan. And I think Najib Saab made this very important point that cricketers were not treated very well. I would like to salute the Pakistani cricketers who, in the worst of circumstances, which they saw themselves, said the Indian cricketers have played exceedingly well. I'm talking about the cricketers of yore. I'm not talking about the people who took part in the matches, and therefore appreciated the way the cricket had matured in India. I also wish to suggest for your consideration that Shahbaz Sharif's Last week in office, he said, I'd like to improve relations with India and ensure that serious outstanding issues between the two countries are resolved quickly. Likewise, for Nawaz Sharif Saab's arrival statement virtually that we will have removal of conflict with neighbors and ensure an honorable settlement of the Jammu and Kashmir issue. My own sense, and this is sense, I don't think we have the facts before us and we're not clairvoyant in that sense, is that Nawaz Sharif will be in power in Pakistan. I will not put percentages there, and Narendra Modi will be the Prime Minister of Pakistan, of India, in the next couple of months. So they've had discussions earlier. They have kicked off pretty well at that Christmas meeting in Raiwind when Modi Saab made an unscheduled, virtually surprise visit, which even his team members didn't know, and they landed up. And unfortunately, circumstances did not let us move forward. We will not put any motives and do any blame game. But I do see that despite this, these positive and encouraging trend lines, if one sees the tea leaves, there are negativities as well. And I think Qazi Saab was right. I tend to agree with Ashraf Qazi Saab. One of the biggest disruptors in any prospects of improved India-Pakistan relations was the decision of the union government in India to unilaterally, I would say unconstitutionally, nullify Article 370. I say this in my capacity, not as a former Air Marshal, but as in my capacity as a resident of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Now that's been a major setback. Now what do we do? I'm a petitioner in the Supreme Court of India, and so is, I think, two other petitioner colleagues of mine are here, Muzaffar Shah and Radha Kumar. I think Radha is here. It is possible, and my fear is that our petitions may not see justice. That's my fear. But either way, I think we need to look at either Article 370, if it is restored, or if the nullification is upheld by the Supreme Court, at a prospect. And now this, I put my head on the block, that we look at a prospect of possible provision in the Narendra Modi government now and post May, June next year of a certain guarantees for cultural identity, guarantees for jobs for locals, and also guarantees for land for locals. As some of my Pakistani friends are aware, in Indian Constitution, Article 371 provides for such a contingency, and actually 7 or 8 states of the Indian Union have this provision. Maybe this will operate in J&K. So I'd like my Pakistani friends, if we have time, to look at that possibility and how does that positively or negatively impact the future of India-Pakistan relations. I was very, very keen to put forth before you a thought that maybe the governments on both sides of the Radcliffe line can marshal up a level of political sagacity and resilience, imagination and creativity, and perhaps revisit a revised peace process of the type we saw great success in 2002 to 2007. In my view, and I was on the second track in that peace process, some of the participants here are aware, very closely involved. It was a golden era, not only of India-Pakistan relations, but also the federal compact between central government in India and the state of Jammu and Kashmir. It can't be the same as it was. Nearly 2 decades have passed, but we can revisit it and recreate that type of a thing in which the fear that was expressed by Faqid Saab about cancellation or revocation of unilaterally of the Indus Waters Treaty, there is a far bigger issue we need to include in the revised process if we embrace it, and that is of climate action. I'd like to remind you that while I was gasping for breath in the horrible air quality index in New Delhi, so are Lahaurias in Lahore. This is a common thread. We're not even talking about it. We can, in the future, if we look at it constructively, that could be perhaps an area of. And I'd also once again suggest, as a resident of Jammu and Kashmir, I think my friend Yusuf Tarigani Musab did put it across that improved relations between India and Pakistan are oxygen. They are life support for people of Jammu and Kashmir. Because we are the recipients in the valley of all the detritus that results from negativities and the consequential impact of hugely negative sentiment in India-Pakistan relationships. My gut feeling again is now I don't have the supporting evidence, especially when we are talking 5 months from now, is that Narendra Modi could well move forward, may well move forward, and it'll become easier if Nawaz Sharif Saab is elected for not a very ambitious program, but at least start the process of engagement, which incrementally leads to a level of confidence building between the two countries at the state-to-state level. And in that context, perhaps Nawaz Sharif Saab's business acumen and his known predilection for commerce and business and economic linkages specific to India-Pakistan improved relations may be a bullet we could bite. The Pakistani side will go along, Indian side will go along as well, because there is, at the end of it all, I think after having achieved so much as he sees it, and as the ruling dispensation sees it, maybe Modi Saab will once again assume the colors of the statesman he did when he unilaterally visited without invitation Pakistan in Christmas Day 2015. Maybe that process will start, whether there will be nudges from Joe Biden or MBS in Saudi Arabia or MBZ in UAE or other friends in the Western Hemisphere could perhaps also be considered. I don't have to go about the low-hanging fruit which can result from this. We have trodden upon that ground so often in the past, whether it's medical tourism, religious tourism, or liberal visa regimes, or people-to-people contacts. But I have one small point to make. I'm a great supporter of the idea of civil society dialogue when there's complete famine on the state-to-state dialogue and discussion. But being perhaps older, though not necessarily wiser, my experience is there are huge limitations on civil society linkages and dialogue when there is absolutely no movement from the state-to-state angle. It is a circular issue. It is a dynamic because one influences the other. My own experience in 2002, 2007, when I was in the track to dialogue, sometimes we were ahead of the state-to-state dialogue. So that dynamic, I think, if we allow to happen, SARC, unfortunately, we have to virtually sing a dirge for it. Whatever reasons it be, earlier it was India-Pakistan rivalry, which didn't let SARC flower as it was expected to be. But now SARC is into a different ballgame altogether, because now we see two peripheries, Indian periphery in SARC and China's periphery in SARC. And in that sense, some degree of friction contributing to rivalry between China and India in SARC, in which I think the way out will only be, as far as India and Pakistan is concerned, to pursue SARC processes bilaterally if they have to be pursued. Very, very fleetingly, Afghanistan was mentioned.
Just continue.
I will conclude. Yes, I'll just finish. 1 second. I think Afghanistan is of immense interest to both India and Pakistan. It is not a zero-sum game. Recent developments in Afghanistan do seem to suggest that all is not well on the Pakistan-Afghanistan track. And not that there is so much good going on India-Afghanistan track. Maybe this is a political geography. In strategic terms, we can find an area of common ground if we are looking at the way forward in the relationship. As I said earlier, I do hope that with all the points that I have mentioned and the prayer that we will have the government in Pakistan and government in India develop a sense of hope and conviction that neighbors have to talk to each other. I'm not saying that we will be living in a relationship full of milk and honey, but as I think Mani fleetingly used an expression, a modicum of mere normalization, just a sense of normalization, which would mean at least the restoration of high commissions to full strength and the other points that I have mentioned in terms of low-hanging fruit, and then patience, determination, and conviction on the part of people who Opisha has assembled today in terms of the peace process or the dialogue of the civil society. That has to continue because that sentiment in many ways shapes the narrative on the state-to-state level, maybe not seemingly in direct ways. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Saab. Talat Mehtu Saab.
Thank you very much.
Well,
I think so much has been, thank you so much. Well, I think so much has been said already, and I will not like to repeat that, but I really endorse both the Pakistani speaker as well as the Indian speaker for what they have said. In fact, there is a lot of convergence in their thinking, and I think it's a very good sign. And the real thing is that from the Pakistani side, I think we will have to wait for a few months till the elections are over, because then that will, in a way, give the political leadership and the confidence to sort of engage with India in a more positive and in a sense that they have the mandate of the people and they can negotiate. For the next few months, I think the lull as it is and the state of sort of what would I say that, they're not talking to each other and there is not much activity between the two countries. That will stay as it is. And so really it will depend, and most probably Nawaz Sharif's party would be the leading party, if not entirely responsible for it. But I would say that and that would also be good in a way that Nawaz Sharif has a personal relationship also with Prime Minister Modi. And they have some sort of a mutual level of confidence, despite the fact that there are huge differences between the approaches of India and Pakistan. But at least at the personal level, it would facilitate to an extent in initiating negotiations. So that is a positive thing that would happen if Pakistan's elections take place, which are very likely in February. And Nawaz Sharif's party would be perhaps the leading party as expected. And then also I would say that the other political parties in Pakistan, PPP and all political parties, including the ones in KP and Balochistan and all, they would like, and I think even the army on both sides would like some sort of an, a movement towards peace and stability in the region. For Pakistan, it's extremely important that there is peace in the region, and especially relations with India, because Pakistan's economy, Pakistan's definitely needs, some sort of stability, some sort of peace, some sort of confidence of the investor in this region, so that, and that is only possible provided you have a good relationship with India. I would also like to mention that our relationship with China extremely strong, strategic in nature, but this does not mean that we cannot develop a relationship with India. That is of a different nature, and that is far more strategic, and it is very deep, and it will continue as far as China-Pakistan relationship is concerned. But as you are aware more than me, that China has a very good relationship, at least at the economic and trade relations with India. And they are very matter-of-fact country, and their leadership believes in a relationship despite having differences otherwise. So I think there's no reason why that would in any way stand in the way of developing a relationship with India. And also, of course, China has a very deep differences with the US, and yet they have the largest, probably a trading partner between the two. So I think the same model can also be applied between India and Pakistan, and the trade and commerce can increase a lot because the two countries are so situated that if truly the relationship at the political level is good, then I think trade and commerce can be facilitated to an extent which will do a lot of good to Pakistan's economy, far more than what it would do to the Indian economy. So I think it is in Pakistan's interest that way. But the problem is that at the moment, everything seems to have completely more or less or shut down or come to a very slow pace because of the relationship between the two countries. So we are only hoping that things will change, and they will change. Certainly, they will do a lot of good to the people of the two countries. I think it will be wrong to assume that it is only Pakistan which will benefit as a result of good relations with India. I think India also will benefit a lot, as far as if the relations with Pakistan improve. I will try to slightly explain that as to what I think, why it is good for India. If India's relationship is not good with Pakistan, then obviously, and is also not all that good with China, then it also really hampers, mutual trade. It does not, and then it creates problems at the international level in SAARC and other places where both the countries are operating. And I think it would be a long-term, a wise decision on the part of both the leaders to understand how important it is that the two countries have good relations in order to really build their own capabilities. Then at the same time, you have a situation in Afghanistan. And the situation in Afghanistan also needs a level of cooperation. In fact, the situation in many other countries which are adjacent to India and Pakistan will also indirectly or directly be affected in a positive way if the relationship between India and Pakistan improves. So my view is, and a strong view, that it is in the interest of India, and I hope, and Pakistan, of course, and I hope that after the elections in Pakistan and also after the elections in India, Prime Minister Modi will probably be more confident, And here also there will be a sort of a re-emergence of the desire to have, or at least to initiate dialogue with India so that, we could focus on our economy, we could focus on internal stability, and also ensure that Pakistan is not victim of any insurgency. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Now we have 3-4 friends from Jammu and Kashmir on both sides to offer their brief comments. And then we will have final comments from anyone who wants to offer, including Mr. Najam Sethi. Mr. Muzaffar Shah from Srinagar. He represents the major ruling group now, Gupkar Alliance as it is called. He will offer his comments in next 3-4 minutes.
Thank you, Shah Saab. And thank you all our esteemed participants. It's been a pleasure listening to each one of you. And I'm hopeful that if we have these kinds of sentiments towards each other, we could play a role in bringing peace into this area. And as Shah Saab rightly said, and thanks to him also, because he is one man who has been after this process and he has not given up. And so do we also. We also have not given up on peace between India and Pakistan, because as people from Jammu and Kashmir, we are the first sufferers of this problem between our two neighboring countries. And I would like to just very briefly mention that we are all for this process. From Kashmir, like Tarigami Saab also spoke about it, Kapil Kak Saab, being from Jammu and Kashmir, I will also reiterate that yes, we would be the happiest that if we see both the countries sitting down, discussing all issues. And that will also definitely include Jammu and Kashmir. And let's leave it to both the peoples of this India and Pakistan. We'll leave it and see what choices they make in their elections. And I'm sure they'll make the best choice. People do always, they will make the final and the best choice. And we'll have to work with that. From our point of view, we are very keen today that as you also maybe knowing that it's been announced that on 11th of December, that is on Monday, the Honorable Supreme Court of India will be giving its verdict on the 370 case. As petitioners, myself, Kapil Kak Saab, and also Tarigami Saab, we do hope that the Honorable Supreme Court of India will uphold the Constitution and they will give justice to the people of Jammu, Kashmir, and Ladakh. And we have put up a very good case in front of the Honorable Court. And today it is not only the people of Jammu and Kashmir who are watching this with deep anguish. It is the judicial societies throughout the world watching this case. And I'm sure the way we put this matter, though we have, I can say very easily, we have hands down won this matter, but judiciary is judiciary and Supreme Court is supreme, and I'm sure they will give justice, they will uphold the Constitution, and they will uphold the rights, constitutional rights, constitutionalities of the people of Jammu and Kashmir given by the fathers of modern India in 47, 48, and we are hopeful for that. And as far as peace between us, between the two countries, I'm so pleased to hear, so happy to hear all of you that we also from this side, we feel that dialogue is the only option, and peoples to peoples dialogue has to continue even in the worst situations that we could be in, because that is the only way that could finally find the way out. And I would be so happy and look forward that we meet in Islamabad, and we also look forward that you are here in Delhi, and it would be best. I don't know whether I'm talking utopia, but breakfast in Srinagar, lunch in Muzaffarabad, move forward towards Islamabad. That would be the way, and we would love that. And Mani Shankar, my dear friend, would be so happy about it. So all of us would be. And I'm thanking again O.P. Shah Saab. We are hoping that we get a good decision on 11th. And we hope for very good peace process to begin again between India and Pakistan. And so nice of you, all of you, particularly all of our friends from Pakistan. Najam Sethi Saab, heard so much about you, and today I had the opportunity to meet you through Zoom. And Qazi Saab, Ejaz Saab, and all our Talat Saab. We would really like to have a physical meeting between each other. And one day, maybe, why not? Welcome to Kashmir. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Latif Akbar Saab, he doesn't need an introduction, I hope. Everyone from Pakistan knows his presence in Muzaffarabad. And then we will have Khajuria Saab from Jammu for a couple of minutes. Akbar Saab. Mushir Hassan Saab, you have also to speak. Yeah.
साहब
नहीं, आप पहले नहीं, पहले अकबर साहब बोलेंगे.
जी 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 जी
अकबर साहब, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है. अकबर साहब, आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है.
Now I think it's clear now.
हाँ, अब आ रही है.
Thank you, Maji. First of all, I would like to congratulate to O.P. Shah on his first birthday. So let me declare it that today is the birthday of O.P. Shah Saab, who is the host of this conference. Thank you, myself, for inviting me on this very important Indo-Pakistan relations issue. सबसे पहले तो मैं ये बात जरूर तौर पर कहना चाहूँगा कि you are the after a very long time we have a voice which is connecting both the countries and also the people from Jammu and Kashmir on both sides of LOC. So it's very, very encouraging and very very important for us, at least for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. My point of view definitely is from the Jammu and Kashmir perspective, और जिस तरीके से मैं समझता हूँ कि I have the meeting with Kapil Kak Saab at Dubai, General Masood Saab. We were together in a conference on Kashmir in Dubai, and I have a meeting with the 3 days conference in Srinagar with Tariq Ghami Saab also. He hosted a dinner at the end of the last day of our conference. We are thankful to you, thankful to them as well. So my point of view is that this is very important. Dialogue is the only way to find out the solution of an issue. Now you can go to the history, even where there is a war of many years, but you cannot solve the issue with the war. So whether it is Algeria or it is Afghanistan, and both Russia came over there, or Americans came over there, but it is the only way we came to resolve the Afghanistan issue through dialogues only. And I think the Kashmir issue is also one of those issues which is to be resolved by through dialogues. But there are so many voices, same voices that have come over here from both the side of the country, from both India and Pakistan, and I think they have very good voices. Like Opisha and Kapil Kag and so many other people who are here. And also from the Jammu and Kashmir side, Muzaffar Shah Sahib, I heard for the first time. And also Tarak Rami, I have a meeting with him. And Kapil Kag Sahib, Air Marshal Sahib, I have a meeting with him. So, sir, this is very important that we should not be hostage with the sub-extremist elements of both the countries, whether it is Pakistan or in India. We, the people of Jammu and Kashmir, who just want a good relations between India and Pakistan. That is in the better interest of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. If they have a good relation, then there will be chances of dialogue between both the countries, and then there will be solution of the Jammu and Kashmir issue as well. So far as the 370 is concerned, as Muzaffar Shah Sahib said, there are on 11th of there is hearing of this in the Supreme Court of India, but I don't think there is any hope from the Indian Supreme Court, because we have heard many, so many cases before that, but we did not find any good. So in 370, basically, I have heard an interview of Kapil Kag Sahib, Air Marshal, on an Indian TV. This is very rightly pointed out. The relation between the Jammu and Kashmir state and India is 370 only. It's based on the document of accession to India by the Maharaja at that time. That's a controversial, even then it's considered as a real document. Even then it is through only the 370 that connect with India and the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So India, if there is a decision against it, that Jammu and Kashmir 370 doesn't exist anymore, then the link between the India and Jammu and Kashmir state is nowhere there. Then the India will be usurper of the Jammu and Kashmir state. So this is a very important, very thin line that has to differentiate between these two. Or I think the Supreme Court will never do such a thing that will take away Jammu and Kashmir from India. So, but the issue of Kashmir is very important for we people who live on the both sides of LOC. Now, the Indian fires, Jammu, AJK, the Kashmiri people are killed or injured. If we fire, if the Pakistani forces fire from IJK, then from there, only the civilian people are being targeted over there. So this is very important that there should be a peace on both the side of both side of LOC. So it's so important for us that if there is a peace, then we will have to live in a peace. First thing is this, that we should have some confidence building measure. That's how the human rights violations should start in Jammu and Kashmir. Number 2, all the prisoners should be released. Number 4, the normalization of all the forces come back to the barracks. And number 5, the economic situation in Jammu and Kashmir, as I have been seen, I have been heard from my friends over there, is very worst over there. Because during this period of insurgency, or whatsoever you call it, in which these people have suffered a lot from the economic point of view, they have been suffering for the last so many years. Now, last day, I have been hearing a woman from Bandipura. She was crying that my husband and my son has been killed by the Indian forces, and now they are taking away my house from us. So these are things. These are not normal things, and I believe that there will be a coalition government in Pakistan. It is not outrightly going to be Nawaz Sharif. Sorry.
Please conclude. Continue and conclude.
Okay, sir. There will be coalition government in Pakistan. There might be with different political parties, but I think Pakistan, any party, whether it's Nawaz Sharif, whether it's Zardari or Mullah Zardari or anybody else who comes to power, Pakistan has always tried to have a dialogue with India. And it's unfortunately, after the Modis coming into power, this process of dialogue has been stopped from Indian side. So I think the only solution for people of Pakistan and India to become a peaceful countries, it is better, as have been said by different speakers, that there should be normalcy in the region. And that's the reason that we can live together. We have to live in this subcontinent, and we cannot go out of it. So it's my point of view, the only way to resolve these issues is the only thing that we have a dialogue and a peace in the country. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Mushir Hassan Saab from Scotland for a couple of minutes, and then we have Khazuria Saab and Mr. Singh for a couple of minutes, and then.
Thank you, Shah Saab. You've always been the stalwart in leading this dialogue of our distinguished guests. I've been participating in this for a long time now, and I think this is one of the more productive meetings. I'm very grateful to be part of this. You have a very distinguished panel, and I have very little to add, but I can say a few things. I will start on an optimistic note, and I think Mr. Kapil Kak made a very good point about the optimism that should enlighten us. The fact that the ceasefire that was agreed has continued, and the change of CNC has not changed the status of that, which is really important thing. And that and this I agree with the reading of Sethi Saab, that Nawaz Sharif is likely to be the next prime minister. And I agree with that view. He's likely to lead the largest party in Pakistan. And by virtue of that, he will be the prime minister. And both him and Shehbaz Sharif has clearly stated, as Mr. Kak said, that they want peace with India. And also the most delightful thing in all this, and I've been saying this for a long time, was that in Pakistan, when we have elections, we never talk about anti-India. And to hear now that in the state election that has just passed, there was no anti-Pakistan rhetoric is heartwarming. And I think this fits in line with what is happening around us. Because, you know, Mani Shankar Arya Saab made the point that the potentially 200 million people, Muslim people in India, will become an impediment to relations with Pakistan because of the Hindu ideology of the BJP. I take the opposite view. I do not think that is the case because, you know, India has very good relations with a lot of other Muslim countries. It has trade and pretty good relation with Jordan, with UAE, with Egypt, with Indonesia, and now Saudi Arabia. So I think the Muslim rhetoric against the Muslim rhetoric was part and parcel of the process by which BJP came to power. And reading the history of the BJP and its original leaders, it was obvious that they had this feeling that giving rise to anti-Muslim sentiment is a way to gain power. And having achieved that, I think that rhetoric will go down. And the fact that the BJP program has been so successful is likely to be more effective. So I don't think that itself will be an impediment.
Please conclude.
Sorry?
Please conclude.
Right. Well, I think Mr. Kazi has made the right point that, you know, if you remove something from the agenda, that is the core issue, it's very difficult to have a dialogue. And we can have relations of commerce and cricket, as Sethi Saab said, and we've had that in the past. And when Nawaz Sharif Saab went to Delhi for the inaugural, he did not meet the Kashmiri leaders, which was completely a different stance to what has happened in the past. So I can see where he was coming from, but I think there is a backlash for that happened at the time, and I think that remains the case. So moving away from the core agenda will not lead to a solution. So that is my conclusion.
Thank you very much. Mr. Khazuria from Jammu, in 2 minutes, 1 point बोल दीजिए आप।
शाह साहब, पहले तो आपका इस बात की आपकी सेहत ठीक है, इसलिए मैंने आप ऑपरेशन करवाया था और आपने फिर दोबारा ये एजेंडा उठा लिया है। आपकी इसको मुबारक देता हूं कि आप पीस के पैनियर हो और पीस के चाहते और उसमें हमारी जम्मू कश्मीर वालों को सबसे ज्यादा जरूरत है अमन की। मैं तो कन्विक्शन कि इस बात को अपहोल्ड करता हूँ, पॉलिटिक्स ऑफ पीस विद इंटरडिपेंडेंस ऑफ द वर्ल्ड, क्योंकि आज की दुनिया जो है वो इंटरडिपेंडेंट है और पीस के बगैर आगे नहीं बढ़ सकती है। और हम तो हिंदुस्तान और पाकिस्तान पड़ोसी है और हमारा सबसे ज्यादा नुकसान हमारा है, और खासकर हम जो बॉर्डर एरिया में रहते हैं जम्मू कश्मीर में, हम तो दिन रात इसी बात की चिंता रखते हैं कि हमारे साथ अमन से ही अमन रहे, और उसके लिए डायलॉग की जरूरत है। मैं समझता हूं कि ब्रेन कैन नॉट कंट्रोल द गन, गन्स कंट्रोल द ब्रेन। जब गन्स कंट्रोल का ब्रेन करती है तो उस वक्त हालात जो है वो सबसे खराब हो जाते हैं। अगर हम दिमाग से इन गन्नों को कंट्रोल कर ले तो एक बहुत सुंदर दुनिया बन सकती है, और आज जरूरत यही है। आज इंडिया पाकिस्तान की सबसे बड़ी जरूरत है और पूरी दुनिया की जरूरत है। लेकिन फिक्र की बात यह है, अफसोस की बात यह है कि आज पूरी दुनिया जंग को बंद करवाने के लिए चाह नहीं रही है, चाहे वो 1.5 साल से यूक्रेन में लगी हुई है या फिर अब फिलिस्तीन की लगी है, और जहां हमारी हिंदुस्तान पाकिस्तान के रिलेशन खराब होते रहे हैं और जहां हो रहे हैं। आज हम अगर बोलते हैं अमन के लिए, मैंने 20 तारीख को, पिछले महीने 20 तारीख को एक छोटा सा पॉपलेट निकाला था फिलिस्तीन के हक में कि हमें अमन चाहिए, लड़ाई नहीं होनी चाहिए, तो हमें रेस्ट कर लिया गया। और मेरे साथ 92 साल के एक्स MP शेख अब्दुल रहमान की जेल में रखे एक रात को, मुझे भी और उसको भी। इसलिए अमन की जरूरत दलेरी से करना पड़ेगा। आज हमें अगर जर्मन की दीवार टूटी, अगर दुनिया यूरोपीय दुनिया इकट्ठी हुई तो जनता की आवाज को हुक्म हुई, और हर पॉलिटिकल पार्टी जो वोट लेती है वो जनता की आवाज को पहचानती है कि अब लोग क्या चाह रहे हैं। क्या लोग ये चाहते हैं तो वो उसी मुताबिक का नारा देते हैं और अपनी हुकूमत बना लेते हैं और उसे आगे और प्रोपेगेट करते हैं। इसलिए जो लोग भी पीस चाहते हैं उन्हें आज पब्लिक मूवमेंट बनाना पड़ेगी, दोनों तरफ, इंडिया में भी और पाकिस्तान में भी, चाहे वो सेमिनारों के जरिए हो, डायलॉग के जरिए हो, और फिर लोगों के सामने आकर भी करना पड़ेगी। तब हुकूमतों को मजबूर किया जा सकता है, दोनों हुकूमतों को। इंडिया पाकिस्तान रिलेशन अगर इंप्रूव होंगे तो हमारी हालत सुधरेगी, चाहे वो हमारी इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट है, चाहे हमारी कल्चरल डेवलपमेंट है, चाहे हमारी आने वाली जनरेशन की डेवलपमेंट है। तभी हमारी सुधर सकती है कि हम अब डायलॉग के आइडियाज को, बातचीत के आइडिया को पुरजोर ताकत से सेमिनारों में आपकी रास्ता जो आपने अपनाया हुआ उस रास्ते से और लोगों को जगाने के रास्ते में लगाएंगे तो जो हम एक नया हिंदुस्तान में सब कॉन्टिनेंट नया बना सकते हैं और सार्क का रास्ता खुल सकता है। और सार्क अगर मजबूत होती है तो हमारे इकोनॉमिक भी रिलेशन मजबूत हो जाएंगे और रियासत के ये देश के ये सारे एशिया के जो साउथ एशिया के मुल्क है ये बहुत अच्छी डेवलपमेंट की तरफ जा सकते हैं। धन्यवाद, शुक्रिया।
Thank you. Mr. Singh, lawyer activist from Jammu and Kashmir. 2 minutes.
Shazam, I'll be briefer than 2 minutes. Thank you, everyone. It's been a fascinating hour or so hearing everyone, Mr. Sethi, Kapil Kak Saab, Tarat Masood Saab, and everyone else who's been here. I'll just say 3 points. I think Sethi Saab pointed out the treatment meted out to Pakistani team. And honestly, sir, I wasn't aware what exactly the issue being spoken about was, because I do remember during the final, the Australian team complained of the treatment they were meted out, and I was about to say that patriotism is the last refuge of we all know who. But in any case, I think one point which Kapil Kak Saab mentioned, so we were talking, I think, about low-hanging fruit. Some 2-3 points which you'd clubbed under that particular heading. Now, so I used to work for a top law firm in Bombay before moving into like the litigation fold. And during our orientation in the first week itself, we had a bunch of motivational speakers and career gurus and so to say, guiding us on various aspects. One aspect which sort of remained with me was the idea of concentric circles, that how you have an area of control, you have an area of influence, and you have an area of no influence whatsoever. So these low-hanging fruits, as they have rightly been possibly, I mean, categorized, I believe these are actually the areas which are sort of in our control. And in the lack of any other avenues which we can reasonably pursue, these should be explored and exploited to the extent possible. And I believe informally, before the meeting just began, Shah Sahab had mentioned that Mr. Sethi's son is a musician with a wide following across both the countries. I mean, globally, but he has a wide following in India as well. So these cultural exchanges or collaborations, I mean, whether that's religious tourism or, host of other aspects, of course, are points of convergence for both the countries. And I mean, recent experiences have shown that what we see as hurdles and obstacles, the natural calamities, whether that's COVID or other challenges, have been far bigger opponents for both the countries than the countries probably have been to each other. I think I just thank everyone again for letting me be here. Grateful.
With the permission of Sethi Saab, let me just mention one or two points. And that's as a matter of information. I don't want the Pakistan's friends to have this impression that the result of 2024 elections are final as far as India is concerned. That would be far from truth. The elections have yet to be held, and they will be held 6 months from now. If at all one has to give percentage of success for the two major contestants, it should be 50-50, not 80-20. Just to remind the Pakistani friends, we had similar situation in 2003 when the Indian National Congress lost the 3 states which it lost this time, and they won the Lok Sabha election in 2004 and ruled the country for 10 years. So we don't know who will be our ruler from 2024. The elections have yet to be held. Voting has yet to take place. The results have to be announced. So that is one point which I would like the Pakistani friends to remember, that the results are anybody's guess. It could go any way. It's a democracy. One never knows what would be the mood of the people at that point of time. And looking at the past and looking at even the results of the recently held state elections, things do not show one-way traffic. I am not still nervous. I haven't given up the hope about the result, which will come on to 11th of December from the Supreme Court. We don't know what the Supreme Court will decide. We have to wait for the judgment of the Supreme Court as far as 370 and 35A judgment is concerned. I would wait till 11th of December and then comment and decide what to do next. Sethi Saab, please tell us, what would you like the activists in the subcontinent to do to bring about peace and prosperity and better relations between two of us, when I can go anytime to your house and you don't have to make 100 efforts to be here in Delhi? Sethi Saab.
Thank you, Shah Sahab. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll address that right at the end. If I may just make some brief comments on some of the points raised by the other participants. My friend Mani Shankar Iyer said that the prospects of a breakthrough are very bleak. I totally agree. I was not talking about any breakthroughs. There are going to be no breakthroughs. They haven't been in all these years, and it's not going to happen in the short term. In fact, breakthroughs are things that radically transform the situation. In a sense, they're sort of like initial steps of a revolutionary way of re-examining everything. And that's not going to happen with India and Pakistan. Certainly not in the near future. So yes, we shouldn't really be talking about breakthroughs. I was talking about the prospects of little steps to try and normalize a few things, and not breakthroughs. Breakthrough would be related to, say, the Indus waters or to Kashmir issue and so on and so forth, the big things. Talking about the small things that have also ceased to happen in the recent past. The second thing is that it was pointed out that after or when August 2019 happened, Pakistan took up a particular position, and somebody said that even if Nawaz had been there, that same position would have been taken. I just want to point out that when that step was taken, the first comment in Pakistan came from the military establishment. There was a Corps Commanders meeting that day before Imran Khan went to Parliament to make his statement. And if all of you go on the internet to take a look at that statement that came from the Corps Commanders meeting representing the military's point of view, you will see that it was very soft. And in fact, it shocked some of us and it was reconciliatory in a potential way. And Imran Khan then, when he went to Parliament, more or less followed that position. It's only subsequently that the positions began to harden on the Pakistani side as well, when trade was then cut off and so on. And the position was taken that unless you reverse August 2019, there was no prospect of any movement forward. But again, I'll remind you that General Bajwa's approach to India-Pakistan has been based on his so-called theory of geoeconomics, which, by the way, the military establishment is still pursuing, and very much more vigorously now than before. And there are implications of that. And one of the implications of that was, even during Imran Khan's time, despite the fact that he had almost taken a personal affront to the Indian Prime Minister on several occasions, become quite personal in his views. Despite that, there was a time just 2 or 3 months before Imran Khan left government last year that, 1 second, let me just finish this out. Before Imran Khan left government, there was an attempt by Imran Khan to open some avenues of trade. Imran Khan was then the Minister of Commerce as well. And the Commerce Ministry moved a summary to ease the import of certain items from India. This was a de facto, shall we say, breaking of the original position that there would be no trade, full stop with India, until 2019 was reversed. And then Imran Khan had a change of heart, having moved a summary which was reported in the press. And that summary could not have been moved without the approval of the military establishment. Imran Khan had a change of heart. I think he was advised by his party colleagues that we are in a difficult situation. We are not even sure we're going to survive. And a step like this could be used by the opposition to create difficulties for us. And so he backtracked on it. But the point I'm making is that the military establishment, even then, even after, even in 2022, in the early days, was still ready to move on this front. So the point I'm making is, and the third thing that somebody said today, with which I'm not sure I agree, was that there's going to be a coalition government, and the partners in a coalition government will never allow Nawaz Sharif to make even small baby steps to try and unfreeze the situation. I don't agree. I think somebody mentioned here that there is a broad consensus in Pakistan amongst all the political parties of any consequence that we need to break the thaw and that we need to start taking those baby steps. So if Nawaz Sharif wants to initiate some baby steps on the basis of an understanding that there may be some reciprocity next year from the Indian side, then I don't think there will be too many obstacles in his path. That's the other point I want to make. And one last thing, positivity mentions, number of points are mentioned about positivity. I think a lot of it will depend, the positivity, the factors that have been pointed out are all very well in the past, but I think much will now depend on what happens after the Indian elections and the position the Indian Prime Minister takes. Whether he continues on this path or whether he thinks that it's worthwhile now to normalize as well. There's no brownie points to be had by surgical strikes and other hostile actions against Pakistan. I don't know. I will defer to the situation when it actually happens. But my sense is that, and the last point I want to make is the point that was raised earlier about Pakistan being in a different orbit, global orbit, strategic orbit, and India being in a different strategic orbit. I mean, the point was raised that we are close to China and Russia and so on, and not so close to the Americans, whereas India is now moving into the American orbit. My own sense is this is not going to impact on the small steps that need to be taken for normalization. I don't expect there to be anything more than that. India has a huge trade regime going with China despite everything else. And I don't see why small steps can't be taken. Now, it is obvious that state-to-state issues end up being dogged and bogged down in given situations and given statements, which are quite irreconcilable. That is obvious. But as somebody again pointed out, we did have a ceasefire on the basis of a back channel. And it is my understanding and belief that back channels will become operative again. They have been successful in small ways. And I see no reason why back channels can be used next year after there are two prime ministers in office, both of whom at one stage certainly wanted to move forward on many issues. And then for various reasons, this didn't happen. Maybe after the next elections in Pakistan and after the next elections in India, some space may be created. Or as I said, maybe some cricket diplomacy, maybe some restoration of trade, up small steps, maybe some more liberalization of a visa regime, without getting into this question of, the core issue on both sides, terrorism for India and Kashmir for Pakistan. I don't think we will probably end up in those areas. Much can be done outside those two areas to move things forward.
Will you spell out once again 1, 2, 3, 4 small steps that you have in mind?
As I said just now, Ji.
Yeah, you mentioned a few steps, but I said mention all the steps that you have in mind. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes, I think the first thing that should happen is this was unilaterally announced by Pakistan was cut off of trade. I think there will be, or there ought to be, on the Pakistani side, a small restoration of trade unilaterally. It can be, there's no need to make a song and dance about it, but government can issue some notification saying we now allow A, B, C, D things to come in order to create a good situation in Pakistan, alleviate the shortages that are creating inflation in certain times. This is a great excuse, and I don't think there will be any issues, reaction from the Pakistani public or indeed the media. That's the way you open up things. On the Indian side, I think the reason why I mentioned the cricket thing was that it left a very bad taste in Pakistani minds. Pakistani had already said that India is a far stronger team and they're likely to win. And that there were no illusions in Pakistan about that. But some small incidents left a bad taste in the mouth. And social media being what it is, glorified them in a negative sense. And I think the issue that is confronting us right now is that Pakistan has come and played in India despite all sorts of problems. And there should be some quid pro quo. The Champions Trophy is scheduled to be played in Pakistan. If the BCCI were given permission by the Indian government to come and play the Champions Trophy in Pakistan, that would be a great thing, especially if the Indian team is as strong as you say it is, then you could probably get a great response in Pakistan. And the third thing, I think, is that this ceasefire is very important. Back channels ought to reinforce this ceasefire. And the last small step would be the easing of the visa regime. I'm not saying open it up for everybody. Right now, there is a very small window for medical reasons, people wanting to go from Pakistan to India. The Pakistanis are not so strict about Indians coming to Pakistan, but the Indians are very strict. I mean, you'll be shocked to know that for the last 30 years, I've had a multiple entry, no police reporting visa. And I've also been allowed to go into Kashmir without any chaperone by previous Indian governments. But for the last 4 years, I have been denied a visa to come to India, even for a small one-day trip. I think this needs to be examined on the Indian side, especially since now the problem of terrorism is no longer a central issue between India and Pakistan from the Pakistani side. We are still saying that there is some sort of something going on from the Indian side, but I don't think that is stopping us. Some liberalization of visa regime. So instead of talking on Zoom, we can all be sitting together in Delhi or Mumbai or Chennai or even in Kashmir, where locals are there in the big hall to hear what all of us have to say about restoring ties and building the blocks of peace. I think these are the 3 or 4 things I would work on. There may be others, small things that others can suggest, which will not change the equation of the core issues.
Qazi Saab, would you like to add anything? Can't hear you. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd like just to say that I agree with Mr. Najam Sethi's list of steps which can be taken. What Pakistan has to ensure, like any country would, that its formal position with respect to Jammu and Kashmir remains consistent with international law, with the United Nations Security Council resolutions, with its perception of the expectations and desire of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And within that framework, even though relations have been impacted adversely by August 5th, 2019 decision, nonetheless, this does not mean that this necessarily eliminates all movement. What has been severely impacted is the formal official dialogue process between Pakistan and India, and that's a very important setback. Now, of course, for us to be able to increase and intensify our own contacts, we will need the cooperation of our respective governments, because it was rightly pointed out that without this cooperation, there's a very limited ability of us to interact with each other beyond on Zoom, etc. Visas and all should become liberalized to some extent, etc. And so we need to sort of intensify and broaden this process. We need to take steps. We need to remain true to our respective positions, state positions. Pakistan sees its position rooted in international law, etc., UN Security Council resolutions, but there is absolutely no reason for the relationship to be totally frozen. Now, nor should Pakistan, or in any case, the question of war or fighting is not a part of a solution. That will not bring about a solution in any case. But maintaining faithfulness to your formal position is a very important part for a state-to-state dialogue. Now, once we have done that, then we have to see where are we headed? What do we want to end up with achieving? And we want to end up with achieving, and I think I do speak on behalf of all of us, might be presumptuous of me, but I think I do when I say if we can reach a compromise, principled compromise settlement, acceptable to all the parties concerned, that is primarily the people of Jammu and Kashmir, and India and Pakistan. So in that case, we would have an agreement amongst ourselves. We would have a consensus amongst ourselves. And that could provide the basis for a new set of UN Security Council resolutions supported by Pakistan and India, which would supersede existing UN Security Council resolutions, and then we would be able to sort of move forward from there. But for that to happen, we have to have not just little steps right now, we have to have a formal dialogue process, which means having respect for each other's point of view, even when we completely differ with each other.
Thank you. I hope everyone has spoken. Is there anything else that one would like to say in half a minute? Kapil Kak Sahab, aapko kuch bolna hai?
No, I think concluding remarks by Mr. Sethi and Qazi Saab are very thoughtful. I would like to suggest that the situation between the two countries in terms of approach to each other is reasonably positive. I give you one example, which is an exemplar for the rest of the world, especially during these troubled conflict times, whether it's in Ukraine or in West Asia. It is a mutual control of escalation in the post-Balakot period, which encapsulated the value of strategic restraint. I hope I have made myself clear. India has been traditionally following strategic restraint to the disappointment of the citizens of India who said we need to be macho, whether it was Kargil, whether it was the parliament attack, whether it was the attack in Mumbai. And I was one of those propounders of strategic restraint. And I was very happy. And I think this is a very, very positive development in the strategic domain. I'm not talking about the small steps which have been gone on so much in the last 2 hours. But I'm saying that should Kodana Kasta there be a crisis, the two countries will approach that crisis, exercise restraint, exercise escalation control so that things don't go out of hand. This is the value of the common civilizational values of force application in situations which demand force application. That's all I wanted to say.
Friends, thank you very much for your participation in this important meeting. Hope to continue such meetings in future also. I hope they will serve some purpose. And I hope that both the countries will recognize each other's compulsions and limitations and work out something which will be acceptable to everyone. Friends, thank you very much once again for participating in this meeting. Hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.